What does World AIDS Day mean to those infected and affected by HIV and AIDS? What makes South Africa's HIV treatment program the biggest in the world? How does government ensure that HIV and AIDS awareness campaigns reach the most vulnerable? And is the World Health Organization on track to end the AIDS epidemic by 2030? What time is it? It is question time. Welcome to Question Time. My name is Mpho Tsedu. South Africa's Deputy President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa says the country's HIV treatment program is the biggest in the world. He emphasizes that this is an example of a commitment to achieving an AIDS-free generation. For his part, Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi says violence directed at young girls and women and persistent patriarchy play a role in the high level of infections in the country. A reminder that this is a live program. Therefore, you can call us and air your views. The numbers to dial 089-110-4210. 089-110-4210. You can start dialing now. At Question Time 24 is our Twitter handle. My guest today, Professor Helen Rees, who is the Executive Director at Vets Reproductive Health and HIV Institute. In our Pretoria studios, Dr. Jorgen Pillay, who is the DDG for HIV, TB, Maternal, Child and Women's Health at the Department of Health. And in our Cape Town studios, we have Anele Yawa, who is the General Secretary for Treatment Action Campaign. Welcome to the show, all of you. But before we carry on with the discussion, let's have a look at what Deputy President had to say.
Our theme for this World AIDS Day is Rise, Act and Protect. As a nation, we must rise to this challenge. We must rise because we have to be determined and committed, as well as confident that we can succeed. The many steps that we have taken as a nation to address this pandemic were taken because we had a firm belief that yes, we would succeed. Yes, we will become triumphant. And yes, we can make progress. As a people and as individuals, we must act to inform. We must also act to support and to encourage others.
That's the Deputy President of the country. Welcome. And Prof, let me start with you here.
Thank you.
Rise, Act, Protect. Did it resonate?
Well, I think it does. I think particularly for me the part that now resonates and is going to be very important in the next few years is the protect.
Okay.
And we're talking about protect for those people who are HIV negative so that we protect people from infection. But we also protect those people who are already infected, both by giving good access and easy access to treatment and by protecting people from stigma. Okay.
Stigma seems to be I guess one of the contributing factors to the death rate to HIV and AIDS, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people, because of stigma, are not therefore accessing antiretrovirals, and as a result, they then succumb to this.
That's absolutely right. I mean, people are still afraid of testing. And many people, sadly, and young people, might start on treatment, but then, for many reasons, stop. And part of that can be a contribution because of stigma, because of not wanting to let a new partner know of their status, and because of fatigue of taking tablets, and there are many reasons. But certainly stigma is one of the things that we have to tackle, and that's really what we've been trying to do by, if you like, making testing not an everyday thing, but something that we all do, everyone in this country should do, and that we should do it every year, and almost trying to get it to be part of our normal life. Just as we would think about perhaps going to the dentist or going to have a test or to check up our blood sugar if we were a bit older, to actually sort of say, this is what we all have to do in our society.
Jack, welcome. Jack? Okay, Jack is gone. Dr. Pillay, let me come to you. You see, one of the questions that we asked was, what makes South Africa HIV treatment program the biggest in the world? Is this something to be proud of?
Well, unfortunately, Mpo, we have a large number of people who are HIV positive. And that's the reason we had to mount a nationwide campaign to get people on treatment. And that's the reason we have a large number of people on treatment. And what we need to do, besides getting people on treatment, is also keep people on treatment, as Professor Rees has just said. But in order to get on treatment, you need to test first. And people must know their status. And that's the key to getting onto treatment.
Dr. Yao, let me come to you. It is, that day again. Everybody then gets to talk about this. But tomorrow, we go back to our other schedules. Yes. How do you feel?
I feel as the country and as the whole world, it is unfair for us to only commemorate the World AIDS Day only on the 1st of December. Each and every day should be a World AIDS Day, because we are living in a society, in a country whereby you find out that there are new HIV infection cases a week. They are estimated to 5,000 new infections of HIV. So there is no way that we can only commemorate the World AIDS Day only once a year. We need to roll up our sleeves, double our efforts in making sure that we combat the spread of HIV and AIDS in our country and elsewhere in the world. Okay,
Jack, you're back. Welcome.
Thank you, Mpo. Thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome.
We all know that HIV is extremely devastating and what have you. Now, in your curtain raiser, you mentioned that Mr. Ramaphosa is doing his campaign and this and that. Now, he's a bit confidential entity. And I wonder if it's not, is he fighting HIV or is he fighting his presidency? Thank you.
How so, Jack? Before you go, I would have loved to understand how his presidential ambitions fit into the fight against the spread of HIV and AIDS. But Tatiawa, maybe let me come back to you. What does this day mean, or what is it supposed to mean to those who are affected and infected? And I guess by affected, we're talking about all of us.
Okay, the World AIDS Day, it means that as people of South Africa, more especially, we need all what we need to do almost on daily basis of our lives. We have to go there, mobilize our communities, educate them, and make them aware as to say why it is important for one to continue using condom, why it is important for one to have a faithful partner, why it is important for people to know their HIV status so that they can be assisted in terms of treatment at the early stages of them contracting HIV and all what have you. But also, there is no way that we can combat HIV in isolation of fighting the spread of tuberculosis as well, because it has been proven that HIV and tuberculosis, they go hand in hand.
And Dr. Pillay, your boss, Dr. Mtswaledi, then says, the violence against women and children is contributing a lot here. Let's just talk about that a bit, realizing that we're also in the 16 days as well.
No, my boss is very right. The Minister of Health is very right that anything that makes women in particular vulnerable to the HIV virus are things we need to do something about. And certainly interpersonal violence, sexual violence against women are things that make women very vulnerable. Now, we know, for example, that when women are forced to have sex with men who are HIV positive, who don't use a condom, they are highly likely to get the virus. So we need to protect women. Women need to protect themselves as well. But the key thing is, I think as Anele said as well, that we need to empower all members of society, but especially those that are relatively vulnerable, like children and women, people living in rural areas. So we need to do more to protect them from the virus as well.
Okay. Muzi, you are in KZN. Welcome.
Good evening, Mpo, and the guest at the studio.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man, I've got a few questions to the Tech Secretary, DTG, and Dr. Helen.
Yes.
That if you check the victim of HIV and AIDS, because I'll call them victims, because most of them, if you can check, especially in rural areas, some of them, you find them that they are dying not because they're not getting treatment, but because of hunger. What programs in terms of food security are they actually putting in place in support of these victims, especially in rural areas, to ensure that food security become actually effective to them, to support them in terms of the immune system and ensure that they're becoming healthy? Yes.
Muzi, are you on the HIV doesn't kill, hunger kills?
Hunger kills is true. HIV doesn't kill, because if you actually eat your medication properly and get your food properly, yes, indeed, there are people who got 20 years with HIV and AIDS. They are surviving. They are healthy. We have seen celebrities which have been out there actually ensuring that people are getting their HRVs actually on time. But the issue of food security is key. If you check now, we are facing with drought. What this organization like Tech, also the DPG of Health, what programs are there in place to ensure that such things, because they are the one who sometimes need to foresee such things and encourage the government with programs.
Okay, Muzi, thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break, though. When we return, we'll get answers or responses, at least, to those submissions. The number to dial is 089-110-4210. 089-110-4210. This is question time.
Oh, hi. Just brushing up on my party. We are going to make it number 12. Official. Let me teach you a quick word.
Yeah.
Kwaito star. A woman who has mastered the art of dancing in high heels. It's up and flip.
Get a bottle of Glenfiddich 12-year-old with 2 glasses for only $3.99.99 and help make party South Africa's 12th official language. Tops at Spa. Shake things up.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today, Professor Helen Rees, who is the Executive Director at Vets Reproductive Health and HIV Institute. In our Pretoria studios is Dr. Jürgen Pillay, who is the DDG for HIV, TB and maternal, child and women's health at the Department of Health. And in our Cape Town studios, Anele Yawa, who is the General Secretary for Treatment Action Campaign. But before we take your, get your responses. Anonymous, you're calling us from Northern Cape.
Yes, I'm calling from Northern Cape.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to support Muzi. I think Muzi...
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to support Muzi. Muzi made a valid point there. I've been about 20 years with HIV. Mm-hmm. And I've been eating healthy.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's right.
Oh, I
That's
see.
the key. Healthy food and looking after ourselves.
All right.
No ARVs, and I'm living a healthy life.
Oh, you are not on ARVs?
No, for 20 years.
Wow, and you are not in any way, regularly attacked by, this parasite?
I only take multivitamins in the morning.
Oh, okay.
And I eat my breakfast. I eat my vegetables and fruits.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. So he's right, AIDS doesn't kill.
Whoa, okay. You had...
So a couple of things. First of all, food security is critical. I mean, it's critical not only for people living with HIV, for people with TB, it's critical for children who are developing and growing up. And food security is an issue in our society. It's an issue already, and with the drought, as Muzi mentioned, it's going to get worse, and it's something we have to pay attention to.
Okay.
So I think that it's really fair to say that we can't just focus on drugs. We also need to think about the person's total well-being, which certainly includes food. And we also know that social grants have made a difference to households. So we've seen better outcomes in households which have had access to social grants. And I'm sure a large part of that would have been due to food security. Mm. Now, the other side of that, from the gentleman in the Northern Cape, who said he's been 20 years without antiretrovirals. So HIV is a disease where there's a whole spectrum of what happens. Now, some people will get HIV and develop complications very quickly. Yeah. Most people, it'll take a few years before their body starts to really deteriorate and the immune system weakens. There are a very small number of people who, although they're HIV positive, their disease progresses very, very slowly. That's a really small number of people. If you're in that situation as a patient, then indeed you're lucky. But for the majority of people, if they did what the gentleman in Northern Cape did and didn't take antiretrovirals, then for 20 years, the majority of people, vast majority of people, if we took 100 people, would have actually died within that period of time.
Dr. Pillay, let me give you an opportunity to respond to that as well.
Thank you very much, Mpo. I would ask Anonymous to go and have himself checked, to have his CD4s done, so that he can see whether or not his CD4 levels are high or low, and whether or not he should be on medication. So I would encourage him to get tested and go for his CD4 levels done fairly regularly. As Dr. Rees says, it's a very small chance that after 20 years that he won't find that he has some symptoms. On the issue of food security and nutrition, again, both gentlemen are right. You need to have good, proper nutrition. And the Department of Social Development has been at the forefront of providing food security, food parcels, grants to people who have HIV and people who are in households of distress, as it's called. So there's been a lot of attention paid to people who need food security and who have been getting some level of support from the Department of Social Development.
Okay, thank you very much there, Dr. Kilebogile, you are in the Northwest.
Hello, ke ko motswedi ko Northwest ntate.
Ra leboga gore le re letsetse.
Ke gore nna ga ke lebile batho ba tsang di antiretroviral drugs. E ka re ga ba cancel sentle. Gore ba khone go tlhaloganya seemo sa bone gore ga ba le mo go sone ba tshwantse go dirang ga ba direng. Ene gape sa bobedi ba dineelwa fela se ke se lemogileng without involving
balusika
partner balusika gore tota ba tshwantse go itse gore ke bone ba supervisor di treatment tse sa boraro ba bolwa ke tlala gape ba le mo treatment ka gore ga go da ke ga ba advise ka dijo ga di tsaya ke le huma fela ko lapeng jaanong ga go le huma jaana ga di ka tse di mothusa sepele tsone ga gona effect e nna mo go tsone. Look, they need to be counseled, though they should understand their status. Ke bona ba sa tlhaloganyeng.
Ma ke lebogile nte ke go lebogela wena tle. Well, that's Mayor Kilebogile from the Northwest, effectively saying that there's a need for counseling, a lot of counseling that needs to go along with the dispensary of drugs, because she believes her observation is that a lot of people are taking these drugs and they do not necessarily have the do's and don'ts list of people who are on that type of medication, and also a lot of hunger, as she says. People are not eating the right food when taking this medication. Dadyawa, perhaps let me just come to you there, because it would appear this also links back to the other question, where question of nutrition is very central to the fight against the spread of HIV, and or not even the spread, but deterioration of people who are already on treatment there.
Okay. Firstly, let me agree with Prof and Dr. Pillay on the first question which was raised by Umuzi.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think Umuzi somehow is missing a point. TAC is not a service provider of government. So if government was giving TAC money, I'm sure we were going to see to it that the majority of those people who are on ARVs, maybe if we had a funding, are getting something. But also, let's look into the material conditions of our country. Socio-economic challenges of our country tells us that the majority of people who are living with HIV and AIDS are poor and impoverished communities who cannot meet the ends. And it is very much important for us to make sure that as the country, those who are on ARVs, those who are HIV positive, there is something which is being done by Social Development Department, because what you will pick up in this process is that the majority of the people who are on ARVs who are defaulting, they are defaulting simply because they cannot meet the ends. So how do we make sure that we meet each other in making sure that those on ARVs, they've got something on their stomach before they take the ARVs?
Okay. Let me take Usis Lindelwa is in the Eastern Cape.
Thank you very much. I want to pose a question to Dr. Pillay and the lady.
Yes.
Because we have never been, let me rephrase, are people aware about those that are carriers of HIV and AIDS, and what then becomes the responsibility of those that are carriers, so that they are aware that if they are carriers, they are not going to suffer, if then that is true, and therefore they have got a responsibility to ensure that they protect other people. I just want to pose that question to them, because carriers in HIV and AIDS have been spoken, it has not been spoken much on that area.
All right, let me start with Dr. Pillay quickly.
So I think Lidelwa means that people are HIV positive. So if you're HIV positive and you take your medication and your viral load is suppressed, then you don't transmit the virus to other people.
Yeah.
But if you are HIV positive, you don't know your status, and you are not using a condom, then you are likely to transmit the virus to other people that you have sexual relations with.
Okay.
Or if you are on treatment and you don't take your medication regularly and you're not virally suppressed, then you can infect other people. But if you take your medication regularly and you are virally suppressed, and that's why we are asking also people who are HIV positive and on treatment to come in first at 6 months to get their viral loads done, and then annually after that to see that their viral loads are low enough and they will not infect other people.
Okay. Prof, let us quickly, we've run out of time, but this is something that I suppose I was supposed to have raised earlier. The reproductive health part of HIV and AIDS. Women are quite vulnerable, I suppose, and they therefore risk transferring it to new unborn children. How are we doing there?
So two things on that. First of all, we've done really well on stopping what we call mother-to-child transmission. This is for women who are HIV infected, passing the virus on to their baby. Before we started with proper treatment regimens, about 1 in 3 of every babies born to an HIV-positive mother was actually infected. So that's a terrible statistic for both, obviously for the baby and the outcomes and the mum. But with antiretrovirals, we've managed to reduce that right down to between 2 and 3%. So really, really push it down. What we're now looking at, though, is that we have so many young women who are HIV infected, and they're young and they want a pregnancy. So we've now got to think of another issue, which is how could an HIV-positive mother who's perhaps got a young woman who's got a negative partner, how can they get pregnant safely, and vice versa. If she's got a positive partner and she's negative, how can they get safely pregnant? This is now sort of thinking of another issue that we probably haven't given enough attention to.
Okay. Prof, let me thank you very much for the time. Dr. Pillay, thank you very much. Tatyawa, thank you as well. And a big thank you to all my guests and to you for watching the show. That was Question Time for today. Let's meet again next time. From me and the crew, have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.
SABC News. We report, contextualize, and present news and current affairs